You are listening to the Moments in Marketing podcast and its host, Dima Mackey, where fellow traditional and digital marketers share their stories along the way. This is the place where we will dive deeper into some of the strategies, processes, and ways to excel in your digital career. We all know that success stories do not come easy and overnight, so we'll try to get to the bottoms of it. Whether you're looking for how to get into the digital marketing industry, or launch your own project, or just want to learn from someone's experience, this is a great place to be. Stay tuned and enjoy.
Hey Aren, and I'm very happy to have you here, and thanks for making it today. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Thanks, Dima. Excited to be on your podcast. We're finally doing it. And looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, so actually, just let's turn to the first question now. And actually, there's no way around it. And Aren, why don't you give us a little bit more details about yourself, and you can talk about things like your college background and your start of the digital career. Thanks.
Sure. So, I attended university. Basically, got a Bachelor of Commerce. I had a marketing major and a finance minor, which are pretty much two of my obsessions right now. Although, remember, didn't necessarily do too much of what I'm doing now in school, as I'm sure is the case with most people. I remember one of my professors gave me a D for using 50% of my mock marketing budget on PPC. She didn't really believe in Google AdWords at that time. Luckily, I was very lucky enough to have a good mentor in my last year and kind of guide me into digital marketing. Me and my best friend at the time, we started a virtual tours business. So really, at a really young age, I was kind of really into entrepreneurship. We did pretty good with that. We were just basically doing like Google Street View, but for real estate agents. And then after that, basically, I joined Kinetics, which is a insurance comparison website. It's a financial technology company, a Fintech company. And from there, I got fished out to Omnicom Media Group to start their SEO team. That was about in 2015. And it's just kind of how I got into digital marketing. Like back in university, I didn't necessarily want a real job. So I was always, I think I remember looking up like how to make money online, and I stumbled across a little forum called Black Hat World. And
That's a great resource.
It was honestly amazing. And there was someone's post called, I can't remember, but it was something along the lines of like local niche SEO. Basically just a way to like win dentists. So I had a site called like westmountdental.com where I put it up, I fired up a bunch of X-Rummer links and a site called Linkvana, which I'm sure we'll get into later, basically black hat spam. Started ranking for the keyword, calling up dentists and asking them if they wanted traffic and if they wanted to rent out a space on my directory. That's kind of how I got started.
Great. Thanks for such an extended answer. I think you briefly touched upon a couple of projects that you were doing back in the day, and like talking about this project that you're buying links, I guess, to the dentist website. Did I get you right? Why did you start it? Like, how did you come up with an idea?
Yeah, so it was literally almost a copy and paste play-by-play from a post from Black Hat World. They were doing it for niches in the States. Like I think it was somewhere in like Connecticut or Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. That was literally it. So it was a local play. So I picked a few neighborhoods in Montreal. Westmount was a very like prominent neighborhood in Montreal, so that was one that I knew there would be a lot of rich dentists and a lot of high profile clientele. It was fairly easy to rank for. I had like something like either Westmount Dental or Westmount Dentist. It wasn't a .com, but and then there was on Black Hat World again within the play-by-play, they had a few of these link services. So Linkvana was probably the best one that I used, which was pretty much a subscription, and they would use like, niche edits and comment spam and all sorts of things like that. And it was pretty much just like a one-stop shop for all your link needs. It was amazing, and it worked until it didn't, pretty much.
Yeah, till the Google came out with a new update. I actually always mixing that up. Was it Penguin or Panda update which affected links?
It was Penguin.
Yeah, Penguin, right. All
Yeah,
right.
Panda was the on-page one.
So you got some experience like playing around with the site, buying links, and kind of trying to understand like how the search engine works. And I think that's a great start to learn something. It's just through practicing it. I've heard it
Mhm.
like many times, even you said it to me but at Omnicom. But yeah, again, just going a little bit back again to the history. So obviously, it's not about only about SEO and it like all digital marketing industry looked a little bit different back then. For instance, I only finished school at 2009, and you started like in 2011. So how did you run any PPC ads, or was it only SEO? Like how did you go about like expanding your horizons and thinking about it as a whole discipline?
Yeah, absolutely. So back then it was quite different. So there was still SEO purists in a way that like only were focusing on white hat. Even then, Google was still penalizing websites and taking it down, but there wasn't Matt Cutts didn't wasn't as prominent. Like hadn't moved to his roles like head of web spam at Google yet, right? So there wasn't as much policing going on. With that said, he, there was a little bit of a crusade that came between the years of like 2012 to 2015, especially. And yeah, back then it was mostly just about gaming the system and that's pretty much it, right? So, SEOs, there was a little bit of a stigma around being an SEO, I remember, because, we were just kind of seen as the rest of the marketing industry as like not really providing much value in gaming Google's algorithm. And a lot of the
Hmm.
time, it's like there was some sort of truth to that, but a lot of us like that had, uh, invested the time and the effort into ranking on Google, we had the content and the substance to back it off. For instance, like my Westmount Dental, like is were very very green, and what I mean by that was, you know, so I work in insurance now, and it's almost like $30 a click in some
Hmm.
cases,
Yeah, it's insane, right?
$25 a click. Yeah, and 2011, I mean, it wasn't much different. It's not like it was like very very new. Like, it wasn't like 2006 or 2007 or anything like that. But at the same time, CPCs were a lot lower, right? So there was a lot more niches that were a lot less competitive, right? Because these things are an auction basically. So the more businesses that are on it, the higher the price per click is going to be, right?
Hmm.
Because they're all bidding against each other. Again, in an auction-based system, you know, and the market tends to normalize, and CPC will kind of balance itself. So yeah, I mean, it was a lot. It was, I guess, a lot easier and less competitive for a lot of things, and the information was a lot more widely available, I would say. A lot more like secrets weren't as closely guarded as they are today.
Are you saying like you found like the relevant information or like secret sauces like more often than it is now with all the vastness of
Yeah, I
information
mean,
nowadays?
especially with SEO. Yeah, exactly. So like, people would like much more openly share things that seem to work, right? Because again, like a lot of things worked, right? It was actually a lot easier to I guess game the Google algorithm back in the day.
And do you think now it's like more commoditized, like it's like a service if somebody learns new trick or like some sort of like how to trick the algorithm still, which is almost impossible now, but still doable, I guess. Do you think they just want to monetizing that information, like selling it as courses or like playbooks or webinars, whatever it is?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, if I'm not sure of any secret sauces that are available right at this current moment,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
feel like if anyone has one, they would abuse it themselves until it's, they see diminishing returns on it. And once they see that, they would sell it as a course and, monetize it more and more. So I don't necessarily believe there's any secrets left out there to uncover. Most of the time, it's just good marketing.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. And again, like, how did you learn about the, ins and outs? Like, so link building is one, like content is the second one. How did you learn about search engines and how do they work? Were there any specific courses you were watching back in the day, or to get that comprehensive idea of how to operate in this environment?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing that opened my eyes to it was my professor in my last year of university. So he was amazing. We called him Mr. T. And he was actually someone that he built the first meta search engine. It
Oh,
was called
really?
Mama, yeah, Mama.com. Mark Cuban's SEC scandal is actually from that whole fiasco. Apparently, he dumped he dumped a bunch of shares on insider information. But yeah, so that was my professor's website, and that meta search engine just literally just means it's an amalgamation of other search engines. And this is the days before Google, right? So you had like uh, Babelfish and Alta Vista and all that stuff, right? So Lycos, like there was a bunch of things out there. Yeah, so this is all before the days of Google, and Mama.com was one of these search engines. And I remember him, kind of pulling up in his nice car and just kind of, thinking that like, wow, like who's this guy? What does he do? And he was our digital marketing professor, and he really just kind of opened my eyes to the world. And he was a SEO consultant at the time. He was helping like brands with their like online reputation management, and even back then, which is uh, almost like a new concept.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, he was always like touting white hat tactics. Even back then, he introduced me to SEM Rush, and I kind of looked up to him. And I remember, asking him about my some of my websites at the time, especially my actual legitimate business, which was Lifespan Virtual Tours, which I started with my best friend. And he really kind of sat me down and mentored me through, um, really taught me the ropes of everything. Um, and then basically after I graduated, I took a Udacity course because I wanted to get into programming a little bit more. Um, I had like we hired I guess it was an Indian contractor off of freelance.com to build our Lifespan Virtual Tours website, and it was a terrible experience. So I had installed Dreamweaver and I tried to edit
Mm-hmm.
HTML myself, and I really wanted to just get into a little bit more about programming to really complete my skill set. So I took a course in Udacity. It was called like CS 101, I believe, but the topic of the course was building a search engine. So it was like, wow, this is mirroring both of my worlds. And yeah, I just kind of learned really the ins and outs of how search engine works and what crawlers are. Because back in the day, like my basic understanding was just like, okay, I use this Linkvana service and I keyword stuff, and I could rank for this site. It's that easy. And then but now I got like a much deeper understanding of what a web crawler is and how it works and how indexes work and how um, you know really how it all works.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was a smart choice to get. I myself, I like to train more on, coding and then taking a couple of courses though they're probably not that complicated. But I'm looking towards taking a CS50, Harvard by Harvard University. It's free on EDX, I think. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
so
Yeah, I
that should,
remember you telling me about it. That one's an amazing one. It's cool that, they have all these resources out there. It's really great.
yeah, yeah. And uh, again, just kind of following down that line that we were just taking. So again, digital industry was built like by like-minded professionals, and back in the day, I remember there was like not a there were no like side jobs as SEO specialist per se, like super widespread, or paid search specialist. So what was the process of getting all that knowledge, and like do you know any do you like any people from the industry? It could be just overall digital marketing, SEO, PPC, social media, or like how did you, basically what I'm trying to ask, where did you get the information to teach yourself, apart from taking a course on building a search engine, and to learn more about the strategies and stuff like that? So that should be interesting. And if you have any recommendations after that, I'll make sure to include those, link them up in the description.
Yeah, to your point, I think like, obviously I had followed Rand Fishkin at the time was really big. This is like, 2011 as I was graduating, even 2010. He had a lot of awesome resources. There was like Danny Sullivan, Aaron Wall was amazing at SEO book. And like SEO by the Sea, that's not something that I had necessarily started to read yet. I think it's Bill Slasky that does that. Is that who it is? Yeah, like that came much later on. He's amazing. Like he's someone that like publishes he publishes information on like every single patent that Google files. This guy breaks it down at a very very technical level. So it's interesting to see someone um, break down what Google's thinking and where he thinks Google's going to go, especially when it comes to their machine learning and deep learning. But you're right. So like SEO back then, there wasn't too many. I mean, there was specific commercially available jobs at the enterprise level. I remember Googling this and just thinking that like, okay, I actually knew I wanted to work in SEO. And I think I remember like obviously looking up certain salaries and stuff like that online. And then just quickly realizing that like, like if my business, if my like quote unquote businesses or SEO project at those times didn't get penalized, you know, eh, the salaries wouldn't have really compared at that time. But I remember looking at this one job. Someone was like a global director of Disney or something like that, and I'm really thinking of like, okay, wow, that is for SEO, and thinking really like that is something to like strive for. Like that would be awesome. It'd be cool, so cool to like work with big brains like that doing SEO. And so I kind of started to apply for a bunch of different things. But as far as SEO and learning SEO specifically and digital marketing in general, I mean, you could read a bunch of books and you can go on a bunch of different websites, but the best way to learn is by literally having a project of your own. If you've ever wanted to start a Shopify store or, try the business out of the box models like drop shipping or anything like that, give it a go. Like your first thing, you should never really think of it like it's actually going to be successful. And if you do end up making some sales and making money, then great. But the best way to learn is by doing. And that's what, especially with SEO, because you're operating in a black box, right? You have no idea. I don't really, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter what level you are, like you inherently have no idea if what you're doing is going to really work, right? So, like you have a good feeling and you have empirical data to suggest it, but sometimes, I mean, it just doesn't, and you have to reevaluate your circumstances, right? But because it's a black box, like doing is what actually gives you the confidence to be able to make decisions in a black box, right? Doing an experience, because if you're just coming out of it by reading some blog posts and reading books, like that can only get you so far, right? But really, to have the confidence to make decisions and pivot within that black box is really where the magic is, right? So it's the best way that I would recommend is like, obviously you can use Moz as a resource or Danny Sullivan or Bill Slasky and all the SEO experts out there, and Matt Diggity, of course, which is someone that you introduced me to, Charles Floaty, like those are all amazing SEO gurus out there. But at the end of the day, you just want to just do and experiment yourself, because that's what's going to give you the confidence to actually make some moves.
Yeah, definitely. And as the saying goes, practice makes perfect. And I totally agree completely. But for me, the start was like I was reading a lot and then slowly but surely, picking up on some, little small project that I was doing. And definitely it gives you even like, buying a domain name, hosting, connecting it together, installing WordPress site, all those small things, and, kind of producing your first piece of content. Definitely, it's better than reading like a book about like how to do it, and will uh, will live with you much longer, and you can learn from it and implement in your future projects or make it even better. But anyways, uh,
Exactly,
uh,
especially if you're young. Like these are all like hard skills in the new age, right? So you want to be able to, know what you're talking about when, setting up a domain or hosting a website. I mean, these are all things that like will always, at least for the next 10, 15 years, be like invaluable skills to really have and understand. Um, yeah.
yeah, totally agree. So, and now let's move to the start of your career at insurance company. I believe correct me if I'm wrong, the company was called, right? And that's where you started your first job as an SEO specialist, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I'll talk a little bit about that. Like, so, uh, basically, this was a very, very interesting, learning experience for me, especially as an SEO. First of all, like trying to find that job was quite an experience in itself, because I had applied to like so many places, and I remember,
Do you have
I
a
mean,
rough
this was
idea? Rough idea how many places you applied back in the day? I think
at
that's
least a
that's
hundred.
100.
At least a
Wow.
hundred. At least
Wow.
a hundred, and I barely got any interviews. Like I was a new grad, and I remember actually my professor was my mentor, right?
Hmm.
So like at that time, and I sent him my resume, and unfortunately, this was after I had applied to about 80 something places. And I remember I was a new grad, and I had CMO like in my in my resume experience. Like I was barely like 20 years old, 21 years old, and like I put CMO of like my own startup, just because I thought that would be such a great experience. And I remember he gave me the hard advice that obviously no young budding entrepreneur slash marketer wants to hear, which is, bring yourself back down to reality a little bit. Like that's
Yeah.
not going to help you get an entry level job at all, right? And
Yeah.
so I removed that, and yeah, I applied to a bunch more places, and even back then, I mean, Craigslist was definitely a big thing, much bigger than it is now. But even back then, it was weird to see a job posting on Craigslist. But sure enough, like I was desperate, so I I saw it and I applied. I had applied to a bunch, and I got an email back, and I remember like looking at this company and being like, wow, this is a legitimate company. They work with a lot of legitimate brands. And to be honest, when I went into interview, I realized like how special this place actually was. Like I was really lucky to be able to work there at such a young age. And I went through so many amazing experiences there. First of all, from an SEO perspective, I had two amazing mentors, Wayne and Colin, who really taught me pretty much everything I know. And I also had a couple colleagues like Jessica and Wilson that were, more junior than Wayne and Colin, but really, really knew their stuff, right? And Wayne really got me into investing, and Colin was someone that was like a brilliant SEO mind, like almost like a thought leader in the space that would interact with like the likes of Aaron Wall and Ryan Fishkin and stuff like that. So these guys were really like number one for across the board in every single keyword in the most competitive space. So insurance, right?
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
you name it, any insurance keyword, these guys were number one for. And I started there as a junior. Uh, basically because they had an extremely large SEO budget. I'm talking about like very large. Obviously, I don't want to get into detail about it, but as large as you
Sure.
can imagine, an SEO budget being like, just spending a bunch of money on all sorts of things from content to links. But I was pretty much hired because management didn't want to necessarily give the SEO team more budget, and I was I was I was pretty much just like, hey, hire another body. You don't get any more SEO budget, right? And I would have been like maybe 5% extra on their monthly SEO budget, right? I was a junior. I was barely making any money, so you could just imagine how you know
How big of a
I kind of
budget
started
that
off
was?
there being. Yeah. But I was also kind of started off there being a little bit alienated, like, because I guess the head SEO guys, they kind of resented the fact that, like, they couldn't increase their
Oh,
budget and they were forced to.
I see what you're
Yeah,
talking
so
about.
it was definitely a little bit more difficult for me at first, but eventually, I think I charmed their pants off, and they and they kind of came around. They came around to me. But yeah, that was where I learned like my, all my Excel skills. Some of the programming that I've been doing now, mostly just not programming, but like HTML and CSS. Like that was really where I picked it up. And then one of the more interesting things that I was doing there was reaching out for links, pretending to be a journalism student. So it was a really, really interesting time. And
I think
yeah, I
that's a
think
creative way to get a link to pretend that you're a journalist.
I actually got caught I got caught like a few notable times where someone actually just like realized that I was an SEO. Like, oh, you're asking for a link, eh? You don't think I know what you're talking about? Like for the Google algorithm? Like I was like, oh,
And
okay.
that was back then, actually.
Exactly. Very and yeah, it was like 2013. But anyways, one of the most important experiences that I had there was they actually went through a Google penalty, right? So, and this was, um,
Was it
I mean,
connected to link building? Is that what you think?
it
Or
was, yeah, it was a manual action, um, and they've since recovered and things like
Mhm.
that. So I mean, this is old news, um, but yeah, they went through a manual penalty, and it was a nightmare. It was tough. So I got to see the real world repercussions of,
How much traffic did you lose?
really. Sorry?
How much traffic did you lose?
Like the nightmare scenario, like 80-90%.
Wow, that's
It was it was all gone. Yeah.
for insurance business,
Like,
that's pretty bad.
well, you can just imagine because these guys were big, right? So um they had quite a bit of brain traffic as well. And in the days of map cuts, I mean, they were brutal. They would literally de-index you completely. Like I'm talking like you couldn't even find the company when you Google their brand name. That's how
Hmm.
bad it was,
Wow.
right? So they were just kind of they kind of disappeared off the map. Um, and yeah, so it went through like multiple reconsideration or re-inclusion requests. Um, it was a really degrading, brutal experience from Google, and it was basically their way of you know penalizing webmasters for manipulating their algorithm. You pretty much just had to put your hands up and say, yes, I admit it. You know, um, I've been manipulating your algorithm. Here are all the links that I
That
built and that I paid for that were against your guidelines, and please let me back in. And then they would come up and be like, oh, you still haven't done enough. Here's a few more that we found. Please,
take them
and
down.
he just went through this process over and over again until until they finally let you back, and you never were really, you never came back to where you used to be, right? It's kind of how these things work. So yeah,
But
I
you
mean,
still were you still were able to, get back some sort of traffic, or no?
yeah, absolutely. So like, luckily enough, and this is also another amazing experience that I had just working at Kinetics, and I was super lucky to do this. But just seeing the growing pains of a startup and them acquiring other companies. So luckily, they made actually a few notable and very smart acquisitions that actually ended up paying off for them really well. And our SEO team uh, expertly pivoted strategies and was able to salvage a lot of the traffic that was lost by you know propping up another brand. Or luckily enough, the other brand was doing pretty well itself. So it wasn't too detrimental to the overall business, I would say. No, it was, but yeah, for that specific site, they were pretty much they're pretty much gone.
I mean, that I guess that's the worst nightmare of any SEO, or it doesn't even matter, like any digital marketer who works on any site, and then to see a manual action from Google, that's probably the worst. And hopefully you're not gonna see one ever again. And yeah, I myself, for instance, never saw it, and hopefully too won't be penalized, or any of the sites I'm working on won't be penalized. But yeah, that from an experience perspective, that's that's pretty unique experience that you've got there, and the action
Mhm.
that you guys needed to take to make sure you kind of get back and revive some business numbers and traffic.
Yeah, it was tough.
Anywho,
Yeah.
feels like Netflix gave you a lot of work-related experiences. You learned a lot, obviously Excel tricks, coding, and even like going through the manual action penalty. So after that, I believe you joined the Omnicom Media Group, which is the one of the biggest media agencies in the world. And just why did you decide to move? What was your core responsibilities in Omnicom? And I think you've got a more senior role when you join Omnicom. So how do you feel like working again, uh, like in-house versus agency side? Like if you can talk about those things, would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So while I was at Cox, I had already, again, I was very entrepreneurial. It was kind of always this way, and like while I was at Kinetics, I started to take on some of my own side clients, and I like being exposed to different industries, right? I really like being exposed to different businesses, and I eventually knew that I would want to start my own business, uh, not necessarily in an agency space because like, well, we can get into this, but I don't necessarily believe in selling my time and scaling that up. There's all sorts of different things I could say about that. But anyways,
Mhm.
I just knew that I want to get exposure to as many as I possibly could to really just pick something and go for it, right? So while I started doing it at the small business level, it didn't seem like enough. And I had a couple of friends uh, that I was working with that had joined agencies and that loved the experience of it, right? And I got a message in my LinkedIn from one of the managing directors at Omnicom, and it
Mhm.
was a unique opportunity where I got to work with, brand like McDonald's at the time and Sport Check, and really just start the SEO team from scratch.
Mhm.
So that's really that's really why I went over. I interviewed. I really liked the space, and I just thought it was a great opportunity for me to work with, gain exposure to Fortune 500 clients, and see what that's like a little bit. As far as like in-housing versus SEO, what versus the agency, what exactly do you mean by that? Like,
So did you feel like, for instance, before you mentioned like you like even like doing your own stuff, you like being exposed to different industries. So I would imagine like working in an agency environment, kind of get hands-on experience and like on different like business verticals versus like when you're in-house, like for instance, again, it's an insurance what comparison website, right?
Mhm.
And this is like more like one niche approach. And do you find I think what I'm trying to ask, like which environment did you like most? Like do you like some sort of one sort of job on one client, one niche, one industry, or like being exposed to different clients, different industries, different strategies,
Yeah,
all that stuff, if that
fair
makes
enough.
sense?
Yeah, definitely makes sense. So, I mean, I was kind of bored of just working with one vertical, even though it kind of allowed me to work on many different verticals because not only did they do insurance, they did mortgage rates, they did loans, you know, um, they were getting into all sorts of different things. And uh, but regardless, I really just kind of wanted to get exposure to as many different industries as I
Hmm.
possibly could, and I really enjoyed the fast-paced environment of the agency world. So yeah, I mean, it just kind of depends on the stage of life that you're in. I eventually got tired of it, I will say,
Hmm.
because I found that it was very, very difficult to when you're so spread out and scattered, it becomes very difficult to make meaningful and lasting change. Um, and even though we did do some amazing projects on the agency side, it was really just like for me time to focus on one thing, right? Even though I got what I wanted out of it in the sense of being exposed to many different places, many different verticals in a short amount of time, which you really can't get anywhere else, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Uh, and like for instance, like if anyone listens and like kind of tries to decide or is like switch career, what would you say are the main like pros and cons in either of those? Like working in-house and like what's good, what's bad, and like agency side, what's good, what's bad. Like a just brief maybe analysis or like your own opinion, experience, whatever.
Yeah, 100%. So I would definitely say on the pro side for working in-house, right, on the client side, um, you're again, one of the things is like really focusing, right? So like understanding understanding a business more than just the marketing side. Whereas like on the agency side, you understand the business, but you're mostly just dealing with the marketing team, right? But as a marketing member of like on the client side, you're really exposed to all sorts of facets of the business, right? You could go and talk to the developers, the accounting department, really just kind of exploring a business and the ins and outs of it rather than just focusing on the marketing side and just getting like a high level overview of how the business is run, right? Another thing is I will say for sure it's much slower pace depending on where you work, right? But regardless, you don't have as many projects on the go. Obviously, again, this is completely depending on where you work, and I'm
Hmm.
overgeneralizing here, but um, you know, you have much more time to really focus on a specific project and give it like you know the the love and care that it needs, right? Think things through a little bit more, and also you have an opportunity to outsource, right? So like we were working with agencies. We're I think they ended up being an Omnicom client. All right, like obviously I didn't work on them because of a conflict of interest, but you know, uh, you have an opportunity to manage vendors. On the agency side, again, you have a very fast-paced environment. You're working with like pretty much best-in-class people, like very, very smart, like top of their game, right? Um, the only thing I will say is that the cons are that there's on the agency side, another pro is that you're exposed to a lot of different things, right? Especially if you're working on like this paid social side or the paid search side, you're exposed to different and new updates from vendors like Facebook, Google, Snapchat, Pinterest. So like you're in the know. You really have like your finger on the pulse as things are happening, right? So you really feel like you're on the ground floor of things, and the level of knowledge that you're exposed to is quite awesome. Um, But again, on the con side, there's quite a bit of turnover. Um, you know, the environment's not for everybody. A lot of people can't handle that fast-paced environment for that long. I lasted 5 years. I don't know how I did it, but actually it was 6 years. Wow. But yeah, it's it can be tough. It can be tough, especially um, if you have trouble focusing on certain things, or you have a little bit of ADHD, which I do myself. But there can be a lot of different things
Hmm.
on the go. So it can be really difficult to balance and then prioritize and really focus on specific projects. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel yeah that yeah, agency side can be pretty hectic, but yeah, also as you said, like being exposed kind of cool. But anyways, now we're like slowly turning another page of your history, and wanted to no, just let's hold on for a second here still, and on this page, I forgot to ask you about the very crucial skill that you developed during the time. So you joined like the Omnicom, and I believe you're like there were like only two of us, and you managed to build the team of five, I believe.
Hmm.
And what
Hmm.
was the like going through junior SEO specialist from switching to more like senior role in Omnicom and becoming a director? How did you like? What was the process of like selecting people? What were the like? I think the most important thing I want to learn from you is like what were your values and how did you think it in your own head? How do you want to see it? How do you want to you know make it happen from your perspective?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's really crucial to really pick people that have a passion, not necessarily just for SEO specifically, but for
Hmm.
marketing in general, or uh, really want to develop their skill set, right? So one of the things that I saw in you, for instance, was you were really, really excited, and you were already kind of learning about the space. A few of the other people that I interviewed, it just seemed like it was a job for them. They were asking about, um, different things that didn't necessarily uh, show to me that they were actually interested in the space. But whereas with you and some of the other people that we ended up hiring, um, they really had a passion for it. Like they were already researching it. They were trying things on extracurricular basis, like trying to do their own sites, trying to do their own research. And this is because they had that entrepreneurial drive, or that just drive to learn, right? That thirst for knowledge and that passion. And I think that really uh, that carries over really well, and then that in a work environment, right? Because at the end of the day, like, you know you could be friends with your teammates, but it is really all about the work at the end of the day, right? And
Hmm.
if the work suffers, then even the personal relationships will suffer, right? So at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people that are passionate for it, so that you are sharing knowledge and expertise, and growing together. Um, I find that people that hiring people, especially ambitious people, one of the ways that I like to operate is really kind of letting them shine or having their moments. Um, I always found that pushing people to deliver their best work and showing that off will always have like that good positive reinforcement of them coming back and even teaching you a few things, right? I know that I've learned a lot of things from you and some of the other team members, right, that I've even applied to my own business, which has been fantastic, right? But whereas like if I you know hired you just based on the fact that you were maybe easier to control, or um, you know not outshining me or in any way, then that wasn't really going to be good for my own personal development as well. So my whole philosophy was just like, allow others to grow, and grow with them, lead by example, and really just try to develop a culture of excellence.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that's very true. And a lot of stuff that I learned from you is like being, you know, uh, doing what you do, being passionate, being true to yourself and your teammates, and always like sharing and trying to, lift the team, let's say, sharing all the best you can and like coming up with those ideas. It's really, I think, what defines you as a person, as a professional. And yeah, just I remember like when you let me do the course in Seneca College, I remember I was super scared, and I think there's like two possible ways in my head that it could have ended. Like you either like let me do it or not. And you said I remember like yesterday, like you go do it. It's gonna be good for yourself, and it's been good for myself,
Yeah.
and I think for everyone, at least even for the team and for Omnicom, because it's nice addition, to the team to have like, even like when doing clients presentations, like that page with bios, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, thanks for that. And yeah, now we're gonna turn another page in your history, as I promised on last question. You actually live in Omnicom Media Group and running your own business, which is to those of you who don't know, can I reveal the URL of the site? Or
Yeah, sure.
yeah,
Yes, sir.
so it's called Mychoice.ca, and it's a fintech insurance company. So yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that. How did that all happen? Mychoice.ca, why insurance again? I guess I understand you a little bit more now, but again, you can reiterate a couple of points. Any challenges at the beginning, if you can cover this couple steps.
Yeah, I mean, like, just to put it out there, as weird as this sounds, like I always I had a passion for insurance, so to speak. Like only in the sense of like I I knew that we were very, very behind in Canada, right? And this is obviously something that I was inspired by, just working at and things like that. Even though we're trying to do things a little bit differently than they are, uh, but I, of course, respect what they're doing. But just in general, I definitely knew that the insurance space in Canada, at least, is definitely ripe for disruption, right? Looking at the UK, around 80, over 85% of people there, they go online first to compare their insurance products. And insurance comparison is the way there to shop for insurance. Obviously, the States is much further along, but in Canada, we seem to trust our banks like quite a bit more. Um, we're very, very brand loyal people. But with that said, we have a huge problem, especially in Ontario, with insurance, where I'm sure a lot of people listening to this will have the same experience. But insurance company will call you and raise your rates on you every year, and this is not necessarily just the insurance company's fault, but there's a risk associated with it. There's regulations. And the insurance market's not in a great place, but Canadians are shifting their behaviors, and they're starting to understand that they can actually save more money, and they don't have to necessarily take the rate that they get, right? They don't have to be as brand loyal. And of course, there's different insurance companies for different risk profiles. So I mean, obviously, you could think of us like we're an insurance aggregator. We are the insurance, like pretty much like a Expedia of insurance, or like any other aggregator, so to speak. With that said, there's a few key differences that we have, right? So one is on the consumer-facing side, we have something called like a price drop alert, and basically what this is we actually will allow you to create a profile and then give us your current insurance provider and your current rate. And if you don't like the rate that you necessarily see, we'll shop around in the background for you until we get a better rate. And also, we're starting to incorporate machine learning into our quoter, where we actually are better matching profiles with users. Carrier profiles, so insurance company profiles with users based on the closing rates and closing intent. So not just relying on like just matching you for the lowest rate, so to speak. So you get called to an insurance company or a broker, and then they switch up on you. We're actually trying to do better in this space. So and then there's a few competitive differences on the broker side, which would be probably really boring for your users to get into, but that's more on the B2B side. We're white labeling our technology, and we're really coming out with some cool stuff there. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. So that's kind of Mychoice in a nutshell. That's what we do.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for the breakdown. And I usually ask this question. It's really like to those who have their own websites or businesses. Like, let's imagine a situation like I want to replicate what you did. Like, for instance, obviously, I'm not going to do that. It's just a like potential theoretical, mental exercise. What kind of ingredients and skills do I need to have to do that? Like, for instance, like how much content do I need to create? What kind of technology do I need to have? How many links and all of that, so like paid ads, business relations, sales. Like, can you walk me through this complete cycle of how it works, and what do you need to do to have in order like to be like sort of where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, a healthy mix of like, um, again, I'm not I'm like almost like a jack of all trades, but master of none. But I'm able to really understand where my gaps are and outsource that. But in order to do that, I need to really understand things, right? So from a creative perspective, for instance, uh, you know, I did build the website. So I used WordPress, and then of course like a mix of Photoshop and Illustrator for the logo
Hmm.
designs, and just manipulating things, creating the ads, like the GIFs for our ads. So we have a lot of uh, GIFs and videos that we create for our ads. It's a combination of royalty free, like stock video footage and stuff like that. But yeah, so just really kind of coming up with our marketing campaigns and our creative. I need to understand like things like Photoshop and Illustrator for sure. And then on the content side, so we started to write. This is like over the course of like 3 years. We actually like me and my co-founder, we were doing this while I was at Omnicom. We just kind of meet every night, and we would write content. So we started writing it and SEO optimizing, but eventually, you have hundreds of pages on the site. So you need to be able to understand what good copywriting is, and then really understand how to marry that with keywords without coming across as too SEO optimized or robotic. Um, Another thing is technology, right? So our
Hmm.
front end is WordPress. So I mean that's fairly easy to learn how to use. Obviously, we have a custom WordPress theme, so it's like a lot of the HTML and the CSS was done by myself. I know a little bit of programming, but like just to kind of go through our technology stack. Like once you type in your postal code, it goes into the web application. Our front end is React. Our back end is a Django Python backend monolith application. Um, the React JS website application, it reacts with Django using a REST API. We use Zero 2.0 for authorization as the authorization standard. There's SendGrid is used for the email alert service that we have. We host our servers on DigitalOcean, Droplet. So all these things is like, I know a little bit of server configuration. I know a little bit of React, like in JavaScript. I know some Node.js. I know some Python. But if I didn't, like, I would never be able to build our entire website by myself. However, I would need to understand these things at least from a working proficiency level to be able to quote it, or at least
To talk to
to
developers.
exactly, to talk to developers in their language, to brief it out, to build it and then troubleshoot any errors, right? So yeah, like it's just constant learning. So what you want to have is, the content creative skill, and then some development skill, and then of course, last but definitely not least, marketing skill, right? So SEO is always going to come in very, very handy in the beginning stages of any business, right? And this is just because it's free traffic, right? So like if you don't have much capital, which I didn't when I was starting, you need to be able to drive, at least like gather some sort of eyeballs to your website in the beginning. So SEO and content creation and long tail content creation is an amazing way to do that, right? Obviously, I wasn't going to rank for car insurance in the beginning. I mean, I still don't, right? But then there's like uh, things
Yeah,
like
yeah,
car insurance.
and actually, you're kind of just going ahead of the next question I wanted to ask you. So, obviously, when you start a site, you need to learn a bunch of stuff, like from Photoshop, from how to host a site, from how to buy it, like build it yourself, logo, tag, all that stuff. That's all different skills, and obviously, it takes time to learn that all. And when you start a site, as I do now, and you probably also know, you don't get like paid or like necessarily like or don't see any money at the beginning, right? So before we get into sort of like financial section, like when you were developing this site and you build it like by yourself and with the help of content creator with your co-founder, what were the metrics that were like super important for you to ensure that you're like, okay, I'm moving in the right direction, that's working, I should keep going, like.
In the beginning, I gotta admit, it was quite a bit different, right? Because in the beginning, you're literally just you just want to see a return on your investment, right? So like we obviously invested capital, like myself and my partner, or like our own capital. We didn't see a return on it for about like a year. I remember when we got our first like $100 paycheck, we went to the keg and we still couldn't afford what the steaks that we bought. Uh, but basically, in the beginning, what we're really just measuring is customer acquisition cost, really. And again, it's very elementary at that point, and you're still just experimenting. So you're really just trying to strive for any sort of return on your investment, right? So as you're starting with marketing, it's things like what kind of link placements you're having per month, or how much traffic, what traffic growth you're having in Google Analytics from your different sources, what your click-through rate is on Facebook, for instance, on your advertising, the return on ad spend specifically. But like as you mature and evolve, you're starting to track things like revenue growth rate. I mean, what we track right now is again revenue growth rate. So revenue, of course, being the lifeblood of the business. We keep ourselves accountable to have a positive revenue growth rate on a quarterly basis. Customer acquisition cost, probably the most important thing. It guides improvements on your marketing and sales processes, obviously. You want to make sure that you're acquiring customers at a profitable cost. Burn rate is a huge one. This is pretty much to ensure that we have enough cash to keep going and to improve our performance. Lifetime value, so understanding how much we could spend on marketing, sales, and overhead and still turn a profit. And then, of course, one of the more important things is user experience metrics, right? So, like, once people land on our site, what's the conversion rate from click to quote? What is the page speed of our site? That's like a good user experience metric as well, because we know that that's helps people stay on your site and to interact with your site. So the time on site from different metrics, the bounce rate, it's just ensuring that any changes that we push to our website and our technology is well received by our users. So those are a few metrics that we're tracking today. But again, when we first started, it was very we're just kind of like trying to keep our heads above the water. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, makes sense totally. Obviously, like when you get your first revenues, you kind of start, looking at different things you want to track, like revenue growth and stuff. And yeah,
Yeah.
we kind of came to the question that I usually ask to you. It's about financials. So I don't even know what's the best way to ask it, but maybe you can give us a breakdown, like for instance, like in an imaginary situation or world, when you want to launch a site, and like maybe a cost per page, cost per content, cost per link. Probably you have some sort of dev help, and what are the approximate. Obviously, I don't want to spill you any secret sauce because I understand that's sensitive information. But if you can give us ranges, maybe margin percentage on the dollar spent, what's it getting you? Maybe you know better how to properly structure it. I'll just give you an idea, and you can talk off uh, anything you're comfortable with from that
Yeah,
standpoint.
I mean, I'll be as open and transparent as I possibly can be. So I mean, just from a content perspective, um, you know, we really want to aim towards like, having like 1,000 to 1,500 words like per page, right? And really making sure that that's like quality content and it's well researched. So if you look at our city pages, for instance, like you'll see like, driving driving tips for the specific city, dangerous intersections. So like really things that there's no way you could possibly know unless you actually went in and researched these things, right? So like, what, yeah, you're not going to just kind of generically write dangerous intersections in Woodbridge, for instance, or even have
Yeah.
statistics on the average insurance rates in that area, or the most popular cars, or things like that, right? So some of the things that we actually have on our page. So that obviously costs. That has costs associated with it, right? So we generally like we try to look at like right now we don't have an in-house content writer, right? But we do outsource it, and we do have like one specific person that we go to that we really really like, and that puts in like effort into their work. Of course, we had a trial and error period in the start where we went through a bunch of different writers until we settled on one to use a consistent tone across our website. But yeah, we generally try to aim for like around 100 USD per page, for
Okay.
instance, which I think is, it's a pretty reasonable.
Pretty reasonable
Um,
price for well-researched content. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So there's that perspective, and then from links, I mean that ranges, right? So it's just like we try to we try to be as relevant as possible. Try to actually build links where we can actually be a resource and provide content value. But I mean, you know, they'll we've paid up to like a thousand USD per link. We've considered paying even more for some great links.
Hmm.
Um,
Wow, that's
all the
pretty.
way down to like 50 USD. I mean, it's a huge range. It's a huge range. I'm sure. I think we net out somewhere in like the $100 to $200 range. Um,
Hmm. And is there
as far as
any budget allocated monthly per links, or it's just um,
yeah, there is. So we try to again. So this is something that I really want to stress is that SEO isn't necessarily a business strategy, and I always
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of say this, right? Like, so we do it, right? We do it passively. We only try to do things that we actually provide value. So it's usually around like $1,000 to $2,000 per month. We spend like close to 10 times that on just other marketing channels. This is, and again, it's just because SEO is not something where you want to hammer, right? You want it mostly to be a result of your other efforts, of your other marketing efforts, whether it's your user experience or your actual technology or word of mouth, direct traffic, building branded traffic on Google. So like actually having like people search for your brand name and your business. Getting actual PR placements and things like that. So we try to keep it very very safe on the link side, because again, like I actually you know I've again through my experience, I know what it's like to rely too heavily on SEO.
Makes sense.
and see the effects of that. At the end of the day, it's something that while you can control, it shouldn't ever be like it shouldn't be your main business strategy.
I think that's totally makes sense, and we slowly came up to the situation where I sort of like have a pie chart in my head. So like, let's break it down this expenses. Like, okay, so you're using different marketing channels. You said it's like 10 times more than links, content. That like how much do you need to operate, and like, can you draw that pie chart for me? Like, I don't know, monthly, maybe yearly, doesn't really matter, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll get anywhere from like um, 30 to 40,000 visitors a month, right? So the site's grown quite significantly, and the budget's grown quite significantly from that perspective, right? But like, if I were to break it down for you, a lot of it is so we're doing some TikTok, we're doing some Snapchat, but right now it's like our traffic pie chart is like 60% organic, around 30% Facebook, and then 10% other channels, right? And that's kind of changed. That's kind of changed quite significantly. Like, but over just based on performance and just what month it is and what strategies that we're using. But as far as like a spend pie chart, I would say it's around 20% content, 5% links, and around 80% marketing. I mean, sorry, 75% marketing
So,
for those
oh,
key
it's
things.
pretty huge chunk of marketing you're spilling. But yeah, I get it because
Yeah,
you
so that's an ad budget, like I would say, yeah. And again, like this is after we found a positive return on advertising spend, and right now we're in growth mode as well, right? So we're trying to scale up quite significantly.
So what's in terms of, I just want to quickly stop for a for a quick sec on in terms of paid search. You had like TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook, probably Google Ads. What's the best performing channel in terms of sort like as a source of traffic and like quality traffic, like the which converts actually into leads? I think that's also useful too.
So if we're
And
talking about paid traffic, I mean, as far as intent, it's really, really hard to beat Google, right? Because at the end of the day, you're literally getting people that are searching for your business,
yeah,
right? So it's really, really hard to beat that, where you're talking about like interruption marketing, right? Because Google, you're actually like searching for it, right? So there's an intent there. Everything else, you're kind of being interrupted from your daily flow or activity, right? So like, I mean, we've seen amazing performance on even things like Reddit, where we've done and this is just like things that most people wouldn't think about, but like a really well worded uh, Reddit ad, especially if you understand the subreddits that you're targeting, it goes a really long way. With that said, I will say Facebook is like heroin for small businesses, right? It really is. Like they've done whether you have your quips and qualms about the company itself, but it's undeniable that what they've been able to achieve on the advertising side. Their algorithms are really, really good at narrowing in on finding people that are looking for exactly your product and service at the appropriate time that they're looking for it. And you hear this quite often, like,
mhm,
"Oh, Facebook's so creepy. I swear to God, they're listening to my, you
mhm,
know,
yeah, sure,
they're
yeah.
listening to me talk." But they're really it's really good. Like the actual stickiness of the traffic, and um, the likelihood of them actually taking an action on your site. Now, Facebook is really advanced compared to other sources of traffic like Snapchat, like TikTok, where they're really good at awareness based stuff. Um, and it's really good at getting cheap traffic. Whereas Facebook, it's not as cheap anymore because again, it's like an auction based system, um, right? So obviously, the more advertisers there are, the
Yeah,
more expensive it's gonna
the
get,
bigger the
right? Whereas like
CPCs.
TikTok, yeah, I mean TikTok, you can get like 2 3 cents CPCs if you really wanted to, but is the traffic going to be as engaged? not necessarily. But Facebook, again, their algorithms are so good that you can really pixel your end goal on your site and then let the algorithm do the work for you, right? And I mean, this is, a huge trend in marketing in general, where we're seeing the democratization of marketing skill. Really.
Yeah,
So it's
totally.
pretty crazy.
Bit scary even, like, so the algorithms are getting better and better at automating the advertising space. But anyways, that's a different story. The last but not least, I wanted to ask you. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I think you didn't disclose the growth rates and like approximate, like what kind of revenues can look like if you're like ranking in top 10 with a Fintech startup.
Yeah, so we're going through a bit of growing pains. I mean, we're actually doing much better than we were of March March of last year, that's for sure. With that said, like, we got super lucky. The Google algorithm really treated us well. In in May and April of last year, we really started to grow, where we kind of like peaked out around December and suffered a little bit of a drop. But again, still in a much better position year over year. Yeah, I mean, in the insurance space, it can be really lucrative, right? So you're looking at mid five figure, payouts to almost six-figure payouts per month, right?
Wow,
Uh,
that's
yeah,
pretty
I
lucrative.
mean,
Yeah, as you said it.
yeah, definitely. And I mean, again, like, it really, like I mentioned, like, some of those metrics to track are like the user acquisition cost, right? So like, while we might be doing pretty well in terms of like a volume thing, it's like we're in growth mode, so we're really reinvesting as much as we can back into the business. So you know, uh, the profits can be amazing when, a lot of the traffic is from SEO. Like I mentioned, we're lucky enough to have it 60%. But again, if you were, if you didn't have much SEO traffic, the margins would be much smaller. Let's just put it that way.
Got it. Thanks. And yeah, and now finally we're getting to almost last question. And basically, I wanted to ask you, but yeah, you pretty much already answered this question. I want to ask you who's helping you with this project, or is it a one-man show? But you already mentioned that you have a partner. And I was just curious, what are your plans to, are you planning to expand, to build like team internally, maybe even like when this whole COVID-19 pandemic situation kind of wears off, like getting an office, or like you're leaning towards more like uh modern ways of running business, like outsourcing, building like virtual teams, virtual assistants and stuff like that. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say it's a mix of both, right? So, just in terms of like the team right now, so it's the core team is myself and my co-founder, who really is just like, I really couldn't have done any of it without, to be honest. I always feel like I'm like inherently lazy, and I always need to like inspire, get someone else along for the ride with me, so that I have someone
Hmm.
to be accountable towards. Um, and then, so we have a project manager, and this is because there's so many things on the go, and I'll kind of get into it later when I talk about our roadmap. We had a business development manager, um, but we actually let him go like not too long ago. This is just because we found that, like, us as the founders, we really need to be the face of the business, especially when we're dealing with like vendors and things like that. It's not really something that you should be outsourcing in the beginning, because we found it much more effective when we're able to tell our stories ourselves and in person. Um, and then the project manager obviously coordinates with the developers. So we have a front end guy, a front end developer, and a back end developer. Um, and that's pretty much it. And then everything else we outsource, right? So it's like the uh, content writing, some marketing help. I've been looking into virtual assistants and things like that. Um, yeah, like, I really, really want to start to scale up the team
Hmm.
as I go into like the really expanding the business. And just in terms of, you asked about expanding the business. So right now, the way that we work is we actually started off as an affiliate, right? And this is how we work in everything, right? So and then we develop our own technology and our products once we achieve some level of expertise into marketing the specific vertical, right? Um, so right now we have our auto insurance technology and our auto insurance product in Ontario. We do have but you're able to get rates anywhere really on our website. But again, like it's an affiliate if you're going to Alberta. So we're sending leads to one main broker partner that we have. That's an amazing broker partner that has great rates and fantastic service. And then for mortgages, again, we have an affiliate partnership there, and for personal loans, we have an affiliate partnership there as well. Just in the next major product milestones in the next 6 months, we'll be launching in Alberta and Nova Scotia soon. So what I mean by launching there is we build our own technology and actually have our own broker partners and insurance carrier partners in those areas that are servicing the leads. And then launching our home insurance product, our home insurance technology. And then another thing is one of the advantages that I spoke about is this is a really, really competitive space, right? So it seems competitive from a customer perspective. However, what you're seeing a lot of the times when you're getting like online quotes is you're getting it directly from one insurance company, or you're getting it from brokers that have a limited uh, carrier base, right? Whereas with us, we're an aggregator, right? So we're able to work with any insurance companies and any brokers that we want. So one of the things is that's a mandate for us is really to get the entire market. So that's going to be coming up very soon. And then the other thing is to build out our white label and our technology, because we're actually uh, one of the things that again is going to differentiate us from the B2B side is we actually have technology that we're white labeling because we think we've built something pretty special that we're using to digitize brokerages pretty much. So if you're buying leads from us, we can actually give you technology to digitize your own brokerage. And
So
yeah,
correct
that's
me
pretty
if I'm
much it.
wrong. To those of you who don't understand white labeling, that's meaning you can lease your tag, and the company will pay you money for using this tag, right?
Exactly.
So there are like
You
two
got it.
monetization tactics for your site. Right now, it's leads, selling leads, and white labeling the tag.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. I think that's a pretty holistic overview of your business and like overall like your industry experience. And I've created this, like small quiz questionnaire where like I ask you a short question and your answer should be not necessarily too long, but sort of quick. And so let's try it.
Sure.
So there are 5 questions, and the first one, Ahrefs versus SEMrush.
Uh, that's a classic one. I like SEM Rush because it has I feel like it's more up to date in terms of like the keywords or some of the broad keywords that it has, but Ahrefs is amazing for links. Like you really can't beat it for links, and you know it's a tough one. It's a tough one. But if I had to choose one, I would probably say Ahrefs because it has more of a comprehensive tool set. Um, and it does a really good job of in a lot of ways, from the site audit tool to the keywords to the links to the gap analysis. It's they really have like an impressive index, and what they've been able to build over there is pretty awesome.
Got it. The second one is outsourcing versus building an internal team. What do you think is better?
I think building an internal team is always the way to go long term. But I think outsourcing has its merits, especially if you're in growth mode. But eventually, you definitely want to be building, training, and inspiring people, and of course, like making them part of the family by, you know, offering them equity, really just like making them a part of your business. So yeah, I think that, outsourcing, amazing in the beginning, longer term, always kind of always build your own team.
Got it. Makes sense. So paid or organic traffic, what's your take on this?
Again, like I said, SEO, terrible business strategy, amazing, you know, way to start getting traffic in the beginning and starting to try to scale there. But if you're too reliant on SEO, you will be screwed one way or the other eventually down the line. Like no business has held top rankings forever, right? I mean, it's really hard to find that. Google's shifting things constantly, and like you don't know what they're gonna do at the end of the day, and it's just like, you know, I would say I would lean more towards the paid side because it's much more scalable, especially if you figure out the efficiencies there. And there's always new things coming out, right? Like new platforms coming up that you can exploit as a marketer.
Yeah, makes sense. Like TikTok, for instance, like a couple of years ago, like nobody knew about. So yeah, I get it. Just
TikTok as well, yeah, 2 to 3 cent CPCs. Eventually, they will figure out their their algorithms, and you can optimize towards conversions much better than you can right now. Whereas like right now, I wouldn't say it's quite there yet, but it will be very, very soon because they have a vested business interest in doing so. So yeah.
thanks. The first question. So next big
And they
thing.
have the users. They have the amount of users, and they have the data to be able to do the type of to do the type of optimization that's required. Anyways, yeah, sorry.
True. Yeah, no worries. So I just wanted to ask you, what's your take on the next big thing in digital marketing space? And you can go like whatever, it doesn't need to be, even digital marketing. Like, I mean, uh, what the how this can be transformed. Like, for instance, you can think about some of the cryptocurrency stuff. Like, for instance, there's like Brave browser. How can that change? Like, will that be a thing? No. Like, is it any concern to?
Yeah,
Yeah, you know
yeah.
where
So
we're
two
going with this?
things. One thing, definitely privacy. Like you touched on Brave browser. So Apple's been doing their own thing with ITP for a while now. Google finally was just like, okay, fine. Well, no more cookies. So I mean, this is just starting, right? Like this is something that's not going away anytime soon. And people are uh, yeah, people will demand their privacy, and this is a trend that's not going away anytime soon. That's for sure. So that's something that you could kind of look forward to. On the digital marketing side of things, really, really interesting. Like I mentioned, you're going to see the democratization of marketing skill, right? So that, PPC specialist at an agency, or that like paid social specialist at an agency is, they're not, I don't want to be like too much of a, I'm not going to say that they're not going to have a job soon, but let's just put it this way. Like, not many people realize that these Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies is like, they have, they have huge marketing spends, right? Like Procter and Gamble is one of the largest advertisers ever. Volkswagen, huge advertiser, right? But like again, these are like 1,000 companies, right? If you look at like the 2 million small to medium sized businesses that Facebook has as clients, think about how much that compounds into advertising spend, right? Small medium sized enterprise actually makes up for like over 70% of Facebook's volume, right?
Wow,
That's where
so
most of their revenue comes from.
that's more than 1,000 Fortune 100 companies are making, right?
Exactly. That's exactly it. And guess what? Small, medium-sized enterprise doesn't have the ability themselves or the resources to hire the top marketing experts. But Facebook and Google want to make sure that they spend more money on their platforms. How do they do that? By making it completely idiot-proof, right? Like literally, I promise you, you can, if you know how to pixel your website, right? properly and tell Facebook and Google what the end goal is that you want to achieve, forget about targeting. Just target anybody, just as broad as possible. Facebook and Google are smart enough to optimize towards those within a few days, right? You'll have just as good of a performance as you would with like the best marketing spend. Like even Google's moving in this direction where, by the way, sorry, I didn't really touch on this too much, but I have quite a bit of experience in the enterprise level on paid search and social. And back in the day, you had like a bunch of different ad groups and different campaigns so you could granularly control your ads. But the best practice now is literally just to toss a bunch of keywords into one ad group and let the algorithms do the work for you.
And they're
based on the CPA
and they're interested to provide you with the best results, because that will mean you'll get more sales and probably you'll spend more money again.
And more.
And this is like never ending cycle, right?
Exactly. It is it's in their best interest to make it idiot proof, because that's where most of their revenue comes from, and that's a trend that you're going to keep seeing. So it's going to be much easier for the little guy to compete in marketing at the highest level.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's really pretty extensive and substantial answer to the next big digital marketing thing question. And because some of that, to be honest, I didn't know myself. So thanks for sharing like the numbers of like that small businesses outspend top 1,000 Fortune 100 companies.
Mhm.
And yeah, the last question. So tacos or sandwiches?
I'm gonna say tacos because they're more fun. But
Came out
I
of
do
the
love a
blue.
good sandwich.
But I think I'm already one after all the restaurants are open. Actually, they're open now, so we can do that.
Let's
And
go.
yeah, let's do it. And the last one, actually, the last question I wanted to kind of to wrap it all up. So yeah, what's next for Aren? Are there any new projects, any new things you want to do, like for fun, for money, for pleasure, whatever it is? And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's for me. Just like most of the things that I want to do is like I just try to have fun with most things that I do, right? Even this insurance thing, it started off as my co-founder, who's like my really good friend. We just kind of we're having fun with it, right? We definitely take it seriously, but there's so many things that now that I have a lot more free time and I'm a full-time entrepreneur, so to speak. Uh, I'm making music. I'm trying to build a video game using um, a framework called Unity. Um, One of the more interesting things that I really want to get into, obviously, like the crypto space is exploding, but I think there's a really big opportunity to use these real life oracles, as they're called, to actually build um, public risk pools for insurance. And I think that it's just a matter of time before we see uh, public risk pools where everyday people are the insurance companies, and they could participate in the insurance space and become an actual public insurance carrier. And I think that things will go into that direction, and I'd love to be a part of it in whatever small way that I can.
Got it. Thanks. So I think it's time to wrap it up. And well, it's been a pleasure talking to you today, Aaron, and making it to the episode number 3 of Moments in Marketing podcast. I appreciate for taking the time to share your working experience and experiences being as entrepreneur. And we talked about it. So there's a small gift that we prepared for people who care to, you know, listen to this far.
Mhm.
And yeah, so basically the rules are pretty simple. If you'd like to enter to the draw, just share any experience in digital marketing that could be the site that you've built or you're planning to build, or you're not sure where to start even. And if that's pretty cool and interesting, we'll pick you up and you'll have a 30-minute call with Aaron scheduled, and that, trust me, that will be worth like a lot of money, and you can talk about anything, and I'm sure like Aaron will be able to provide you with some sort of an action plan. And
Yeah,
also
I'll give
Aaron,
you all the secrets.
Yeah. And if you want to share any educational links with me, I'll make sure to link them up. And thanks again and enjoy your day. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, it was fun, man. Thanks again. Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye. And that does it for today. Hope you liked an episode, and if you have any additional questions for me or our guest, please do not hesitate to reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn or Facebook. Simply Google my first and last name and you should be able to see profile links. If you liked an episode, please do subscribe to the Moments in Marketing podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform of your choice. It's also available on SoundCloud and YouTube. Stay curious.